Well, welcome everyone to Law Talk, brought to you by the Falvello Law Firm, falvellolaw.com, 570-788-4191. Interesting show today with attorney Conrad Falvello. Connie, nice to see you again.
Good to see you again, Sam.
How's the family doing?
Family's doing well. Family's doing well.
The surgeon's doing good?
Surgeon's doing good, and I just got over a cold that was a gift from my grandson. So we're doing good now. We're doing good.
That's good. Today's show is interesting, Connie. I was telling you about, different things. The person asked you some questions here. I'm anxious to see what the answers are. But one of the things that this, folks, if you have any questions, you could email me, sam@ssptv.com, and I'll be more than happy to present them to Connie. One question was, how do you decide what you should sue for when you have an accident and cannot work?
Okay. That at times can be very subjective because a big component of the damages or compensation that you ask for are comprised of what we call pain and suffering. And pain and suffering can include your physical pain and suffering, your emotional pain and suffering, your emotional disruption. They call it infliction of emotional distress. It can be any number of things. Inconvenience. It could be the loss of the use of some type of body function. And the law doesn't allow lawyers or anybody else really to put a number on that part of the compensation. That is solely what we call the province of the jury. So you present your evidence at trial. You can have your doctors testify at trial and talk about how the injuries have impacted the individual. But the jury ultimately is told, look, you decide. And the reason for that is that everybody on a jury, probably at some time or another, has been affected by some type of injury, or a family member had an injury. It doesn't have to be an accident, but a work injury, a fall injury, anything at all. And they listen to how the injuries have affected and impacted the individual, and then they put a number on it, okay? So they're called, in our business, they're called non-economic damages. And non-economic damages are pain and suffering damages in a big category called pain and suffering. The other part of damages or compensation is what we call economic damages. So I'll give you two examples there. Not necessarily in a car accident, but let's say you're in a car accident and your coverage for medical expenses on your car insurance has expired. And maybe you don't have wage coverage on your car insurance. So those are two things that can be reduced to a figure with pretty easily done. If you're making, let's say, just to use a number, if you're making $500 a week and you lose that as your employment compensation, you can just do the math. How long are you off work? Or how long will you be off work? It all depends on the seriousness of the injury. But let's say you're off a year, 500 translates to whatever, about $28,000. Well, you can present that to the jury. Okay, that's pretty easy. So the injured party, the plaintiff, missed a year of work, lost $25,000. You can ask for that. If there are unpaid medical bills, and let's say they total $10,000, whatever it is, that's an economic damage. It's an economic loss. If you have to pay those out of pocket, you can ask the jury. This is the medical bills. We were asking for that. So in this scenario that I just described, you would have $35,000 of economic damages, but everything else is decided by the jury. And in my experience with a jury, you have 12 people, and you may have somebody that might be a little higher and somebody might be lower, and eventually they come to some middle ground. At least that's been my experience, and they award pain and suffering damages. From our perspective, the lawyer's perspective, let's say that we're in suit, everything that we've done, we're ready for trial, depositions, other discovery, whether it's documents or what we call interrogatories, written questions and answers. And we're ready, and the other lawyer approaches us and says, you know, is there a chance that we can settle this case? That's when we would meet with the client. We'll meet with the client and say, look, here's what we think. And one of the factors that does come into play is the liability issue. So you might say, well, what does that have to do with how much the case is worth? All right? Here's where it can come into play. If you have an injured plaintiff who may have some responsibility for the accident on their side of the equation, a percentage may come into play of responsibility. It's called comparative negligence. So let's take my example again. $35,000 in economic damages. But let's say a jury may decide that my client might be 20% responsible for the accident. They can take that $35,000 and reduce it by 20% when they make the award. And again, that is very subjective, sometimes hard to peg, but it can come into play when we're discussing it with our client about, okay, client's going to want to know, what do you think? They're going to ask us, say, okay, here are the factors that come into play, okay? There are many others, in particular medical records. Medical records are very important. For example, if the client and the patient or the doctor has been what we call compliant with the medical directive of the doctor, have they shown up for appointments? Are they taking their medication? That can come into play. That can come into play as well, particularly if they're not compliant.
Let's assume that the party is 100% correct. Okay, there's
no issue on the liability.
There's no issue, okay.
Okay.
But here's this particular person was making X amount of dollars and she cannot work. Okay, she cannot work. However, when the lawyer was discussing with her, said, well, she was making $50,000, I think, a year or whatever, but she had side jobs that was earning another $10,000 a year for her. So in essence, she was making $60,000 a year. Right. Now she's done. She can't work, okay? And so how do you is that part of the economic situation when you're going in, or is that part of pain and suffering?
Oh, that's economic. That's part of the economic part of compensation.
So how many years do you figure then?
damages.
I mean, how would you figure?
It depends.
On the age of the person too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, my assumption, Sam, is that in your hypothetical, this person could not work permanently.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we take into consideration the age of the person at the time of the accident, and if they haven't worked at all from the time the accident occurred and will not be able to work for the balance of their career, it depends on what their career is. I mean, sometimes we take it to age 65, sometimes to 67, more recently to age 70, because more and more people are working longer. They're deferring Social Security, retirement Social Security, so they can continue to work. And the way that we work that in is we use an economist to project those numbers over the work-life expectancy of the individual.
Okay.
And we're allowed to build in growth. By law, we could do that, and the economist does that for us. And you might say, well, how does the economist do that? Well, first of all, they would write us a report, a detailed report, taking into consideration the educational background and the occupational background of the individual. And then they factor in economics, and then they project it out and they give us a number. And they could do that from everything from your basic wages to additional income from a second job, to the value of benefits, and even to the point of what that person might be losing, if you will, in contributions to a retirement account if they had one through their employer. So there's many things that come into play, probably more than we can cover in the show, but yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason you want to get a lawyer.
Let's assume, you know, I think the person was 44 or 45. So if you're looking at 20 years, all right, at 50,000, that's $1 million.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Now, that has nothing to do with pain and suffering, however.
Correct.
Okay. So a jury comes out and says, we're gonna give you, you know, you got now. Do they also have to prove the economic side, the jury, or can they say no? We're going to give you less than that or more than that, as well as the pain and suffering, or do they?
All of it is discretionary with the jury. You know, as a plaintiff lawyer, we give them numbers that we feel are based in fact, and the facts would be what the educational and occupational history of our client is.
How does it?
But the defense can present other numbers as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
so how
yeah.
does the jury decide what pain and suffering is? Because you got the $1 million in wages, okay? How do they come up with pain and suffering?
Sam, in Pennsylvania anyway, and some of the viewers out there may see, well, in New York or California or another state, wherever it might be, say, well, so-and-so is suing for $50 million. That may be because in those states, I, as a lawyer, can stand in front of a jury and say, this pain and suffering for this person is worth $50 million. We cannot do that here in Pennsylvania. We can talk about how it's impacted our clients. We can talk about how it's impacted not only their work, but what they can do at home, what services they could do at home. Are they in pain every day? Do they have to take medication every day to address the pain? Can they sleep at night? Are they limited in what they can do? For example, were they athletic and now they can't do athletes? You know, all of those things come into play. But the bottom line is the jury is the only people that can put a number on it.
Okay, after you get your settlement, and can it be contested? Can the other side contest? They're giving this person $3 million for pain and suffering, $1 million, so there's $4 million that the person, but can it be contested?
Contested in the sense, Sam, that it can be appealed.
Oh, appealed, I'm sorry,
The defense can appeal a verdict, but I can tell you that unless something pretty extraordinary was done wrong by the judge during the trial, appellate courts are very reluctant to take away from the jury what they did in rendering a verdict.
The jury gave me $5 million, all right, and now after about a year I find out that's not enough. I need more money. Can I go back?
No.
Okay.
No. The short answer is no. I mean, once you go and
you get it.
and you get your verdict, you know, and it's not appealed, then that's it. And especially if it's paid. And but no, that's you know, that you have to live with what the jury verdict is.
Learn a lot of these shows, right? But when we come back, we got some very interesting questions for Connie, and these are interesting. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Law Talk, my friends. Remember, it's brought to you by Falvello Law Firm, falvellolaw.com, and the phone number is 570-788-4191. Once again, I want to thank all of you who participated in our scientific poll that was conducted by Susquehanna Polling and Research. They were just voted #1 pollsters by Real Clear Politics which is, the firm that we use to determine our viewership. And we want to thank you very much. This show particularly is seen by 30 to 35,000 people per week. So we're appreciative of that. Now, Conrad, we have...
If I'm not mistaken, Sam, I think Susquehanna has Hazleton roots here.
Yes, Jimmy Lee. He's the president. Yep. All right, so here's a question. When did you decide you wanted to be a lawyer?
That's an interesting question. As things go, it was pretty late in the game for me. It wasn't something that I decided when I was 12 years old, because honestly, until I was about 18, 19, all I wanted to do was play football. But towards the end of my college career is when I decided, I'd say when I was a junior in college, and a lot of factors came into play. I was thinking about medical school, and but I think what the clincher for me was that it was our family business. It was what my grandfather had done, and my father, and so one of the five of my group of kids had to continue the legacy, I guess you would say. So I was fortunate enough to get into law school, and when I came out, practiced with my dad.
What do you like most about being a lawyer?
What I like most, Sam, I think the really true thing that I like the most is what we do for people. As part of our job, we've been helping the working men and women of the Hazleton area or our family has for now going on 100 years. And, my grandfather started out, he serviced a lot of the immigrant population here in town, beginning in 1923, because he could speak Italian. So he worked for a lot of the miners, and I saw that because for the first 8 or 9 years of my life, we lived in the same household, 3 generations in one house. And then my dad continued that, a lot of service publicly with the school district and some municipalities. And then I tried to follow suit, again with the city of Hazleton and Mayor Barletta and some other service there. So that stuff is important to me. But doing things for our clients, whether it's personal injury, which is what we do mostly, and helping them get back on their feet from something that wasn't their fault, not caused by them, and something sudden and disruptive, and we can have a big impact on the lives of them and their families. That's really important to me.
Now, the opposite side. What do you like least about being a lawyer?
Well, I think it's not that I don't like this, Sam, but and I'll tell you an interesting story. The viewers might like this. When my first child was born, my son, it was over Labor Day weekend. My wife had to go in the hospital in labor over the weekend, so Monday's off, but Tuesday, I had to pick a jury, and I had 2 pretrial conferences in Wilkes-Barre Tuesday morning. So at the time, my wife was up Wilkes-Barre General for the delivery of my son. So up we go, and I bring my suit with me. I brought my lawyer suit, as I call it, the trial suit. So she's still in labor. Wilkes-Barre General was about 2 blocks from the courthouse. So I'm with her there Monday night. Tuesday morning, I change, walk over to the courtroom, pick my jury, go to the pretrials, and then come back, and my son was born Tuesday afternoon. So it's something we do. It's what we bought into. It comes with the territory, but at times the work does take you away from family. Having said that, I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with my kids growing up. So. I guess that it's not that I don't like that, but I'm willing to do that, to do what I do, And thankfully, my family understood that.
Are you the attorney that will handle my case, or do you pass it on to someone else?
Sam, we are a two-person law firm, myself and my daughter Alexis. And if you come to us with your personal injury case, you're going to work with us.
And you're talking about, I know in the upcoming shows we're going to do a nice 100-year anniversary shows, which I'm looking forward to. But sometimes, you know, they go to, sometimes they feel it's best to go to a big law firm with about 25, 30 people or 10 or whatever working. And then what happens, they get shuffled around sometimes. And I think this person says, look, I mean, am I going to have to go to this person, that person, and then all of a sudden it's a paralegal and, you know.
No, we're what I would call a small town law firm. We think that service is what separates us from the bigger firms. And I think that, you know, as a client, I think anyway, that the client would prefer, if you have a question, you need to meet, you need to be informed, you should talk to an attorney.
So when people have the assumption, sometimes when they say, you know, you said you're a small town lawyer, you know, well, should I go to a Philadelphia lawyer who maybe knows more than you, Connie?
Well, one of the advantages that we have here is I started out right out of law school with some pretty heavy-duty cases, and been doing them ever since. And we've had good results. And you know, do we have thousands of cases? No, we couldn't handle thousands of cases. Like, you know, you see some firms that say, well, we're the biggest plaintiff firm in the country. Well, that's fine, but they're all over, okay? But if you're in the Hazleton area and you want to talk to, I think, a very experienced lawyer that gets good results, we're right here. Yeah. We're right here.
How do you determine a strategy for your case?
Depends on the case. It really is a case-by-case determination, and I think that's the way it should be. And you know, again, this plays into what I think is what we do, and that is the personal service. We get to know the clients, and we try to formulate for them the best plan for their case. And we tell the clients, I think we tell them, it's a policy of ours, we tell them what they need to know. A lot of lawyers, at least I've heard, don't do that. And that's how we formulate a plan. So there's no cookie cutter for injury cases, Sam. Every single one is different. Yeah.
Are there alternatives to going to court?
Yes, there are. And in fact, those alternatives are becoming more popular today because over the years, to go to trial with a personal injury case, the costs are going up and up and up. And so what we've seen and what we've done quite a bit of, I've been doing them for years, is either what we call arbitration, and the courts favor arbitration because it takes it off their calendar, but in arbitration, both sides would agree. You can hire usually a retired judge to hear the case. And it simplifies things, keeps the cost down, and I found that the results are very comparable to jury trials.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
Very comparable. Yeah.
So, folks, if you have a question, these are all questions that were called in. You could email me, sam@ssptv.com, or go to falvellolaw.com, and you know, their website. They have all their information there. The phone number, etc., is 570-784-4191. I'm looking forward to the next two shows.
Yep.
They're going to be interesting. Remember, folks, if you need a lawyer, you got Falvello Law Firm who sponsors this show. We'll see you next time.